Hello everyone. So, here's that video that I talked about so long ago, and we're finally here. So, the topic of today is suicide. And how do I deal with it? Um, Very brief statistic. About 1 out of 10 people with borderline personality disorder will end up committing suicide. So, it's actually not disconnected from borderline personality disorder at all. It's a very common occurrence. Um, and actually, if you went ahead and added to that the number of people with borderline personality disorder who end up overdosing in order to get away from their symptoms, you're actually looking at a much greater number. Um, So, um, basically, here's one of the things that I realized when I was going through this recent phase. Um, my experiences with suicide, I almost have to reframe that word. Um, for me, you'll notice as I go along in my description that I kind of view suicide and mortality in a sort of symbiotic fashion, and the two intertwine in my mind a little bit. And this is for a very good reason. I have found that the more I embrace my mortality, the less I feel the need to impose a more immediate mortality. If that makes sense. So basically, I'm saying I don't feel as much need to kill myself, considering that death really isn't that far away. Now, this may actually not work, may not be that helpful information for some people, maybe even most people. But in my particular case, I have multiple health issues, many of which stem from the antipsychotics I was put on when I was a kid. Um, Very common occurrence with borderline personality disorder, again. But a lot of antipsychotics do a lot of damage. A lot of damage. Um, So, in my case, won't get into all the details, but it basically cut my life in half. Um, so, I'm making this video when I'm about 35, around there. I don't really pay attention because I don't keep track of my birthday that much. Um, and I have probably about 5 to 10 more years left to live. Um, there's basically not much you can do about it. Mess with one body part, another body part fails. It's a kind of a delicate system um, issue. So, um, I really don't have that long. Part of the reason, big part of the reason why I'm making these videos is because of the fact that um, more and more as time goes on, I'm realizing I want more than this world has to offer. Um, that while sticking around for other people may sound admirable, uh, sometimes the best thing in the world for a person to do is just get out of the way. Um, as I used to say for a long time, I said the world is better off without me, and I am better off without it. Um, so I've embraced my mortality. The further I get in my treatment, I think it's kind of ironic. People want you to become whole so that they don't have to deal with you as much. And they don't have to deal with you as much when you are whole because you'll tend to avoid people more because um, people bring their problems to you too often. When you're not whole yet, when you're still trying to fill those holes in yourself, you will go through all kinds of emotional gymnastics, convincing yourself or chasing without convincing yourself or being able to convince yourself um, that it's not worth it. Um, but when you don't need that anymore, when you have successfully been able to fill those holes in your state of being, um, you don't need it as much, and so it gives you a certain insight um, that is more objective versus more subjective, more well, no, not really. It's less subjective, but it's less emotional, um, and you're able to more reasonably weigh what people are worth at that point to you, and you probably will choose not to associate so much. So, even though they're easier to deal with, they're harder to hang out with, they're harder to spend time with and get to know at that point. So, this provides means of allowing people to get to know me and the way that I've dealt with things and some of the weird ways that certain things can present, and hopefully do some people some good without me having to stick around to try to assist the masses. And that's basically the long way of me saying I don't want to have regret that I could have done more or I should have done more. Um, I don't want to feel guilty for having left. Um, and as my life moves forward, I want to go out the way that I want to go out, doing things that I want to do, that I want to enjoy in my last moments, and that kind of thing. Um, so all of this kind of plays in, and um, because of that short time that I have, I don't really have to struggle with the thought of going on and on and on for another 50 years or more. I don't have to deal with that problem. I don't even have to conceptually deal with that problem. I can just accept I don't have long. And it makes me feel better. In a weird way, it makes me feel better. Um, Another important um, distinction is that when I think about suicide or when I think about death, once again, it kind of mix the two, and the two ended up mixing. It mixed in my head sometimes. But when I think about that, I feel happy. I don't. I don't feel sad. I don't feel angry. I don't feel overwhelmed. It's almost like a kind of vacation in a way. Um, the the best way that I can explain the feeling is just a complete acceptance of my mortality. Um, and I think about leaving things as they are, and any responsibilities that may seem pertinent to this world. Um, so many of the responsibilities we have in this world are fabrications. They're things like, well, you need money in order to eat, but we made it that way. We made it so you couldn't hunt. uh, so, uh, um, and well, you need to make money in order to pay off the money that you borrowed and the money on top of that, um, and we box ourselves into this world in which we can't go by without having to work. And it's like, oh, thank God I'm leaving this behind. Because all I really want is just peace. All I really want is just to get away. And you can never get away from human beings. They're freaking everywhere. So, um, I mean, these are some of the thoughts that I have. These are some of the emotions that I have when I'm going through this, and I just kind of sit back and really embrace it. I listen to some sad music or whatever, and I just start feeling this like euphoric sense of yes. And it sounds really messed up, but that is part of how I deal with it. Um, Now, on the subject of debt, and some of the leashes that we put on ourselves, and it's important to remember that if you are in this boat, you can, and you are struggling with feelings of suicide, and these things that I've been talking about haven't particularly been working for you. Um, One of the things that I'm trying to do before I start living my own life the way that I really want to live it for the rest of the years that I've got is that I'm trying to pay off my debt. I have a considerable amount, about 10 years worth of medical expenses, and trying to deal with my borderline personality disorder or whatnot. Um, I basically started about a year and a half ago with a debt of about $50,000. So, um, it's currently down to about 30. So, making lots of progress. Um, but it's important to me that I pay that debt off. When you agree to take on debt, you're essentially writing a promissory note. I mean, that's what you're doing when you accept that credit card, and when you've applied, is you are saying, "Hey, I don't have the money right now, but under these conditions, I promise to pay you back." Promises are very important to me. So, even though with the amount of debt that I had, I would have qualified for all kinds of assistance and write off and extra stuff like that. Um, I'd rather pay it off as I promised to, as a matter of honor. So, until I get that done, I plan on sticking around. And for some people, that little bit, that integral reason for sticking around may be exactly what you need to fight it off for at least a little while. Ultimately, that should not be your reason. Your reason should not be so obligation based, because it will prevent you from growing and recovering in other ways. But I've used that on numerous occasions. It's also important to state that though I do have reduced time, I don't really want to die in a hospital bed or leave it up to doctors. I mean, doctors are how I got into this mess in the first place to keep me alive. Um, for years, I would have described myself as having a death wish. And when I think of myself and the way that I'd like to go out, there are a few things that I'd like to do. Um, but most of the times, when I think about the way that I want to end things, when I want to end my life, I want to pay off my debt. I want to pass on whatever knowledge, whatever wisdom I've gathered that could be of use to my niece, who's basically the only family member I'm close to. Um, and I'd like to own a husky. I'd like to have my own husky for a while. Um, I love huskies, Siberian huskies. Um, and I've never actually had my very own dog before. I've had been around dogs, had family members have dogs, and a whole bunch of things, but I've never actually had one of my own. So the combination, I'd really like to experience that. Um, I've previously already said goodbye to the possibility of having a spouse or children or anything like that. So that's not really on my list. That was for like 30 years, but not so much anymore. And I might get in that a little bit later, but for now we're moving on. Um, but when I think past that, those are my goals. But when I think past that to the way that I want to go out, I think of things like trying to swim across the Pacific Ocean. Um, you're almost guaranteed to die from exposure. It probably won't even be a shark attack or anything like that. Won't be like you get caught in a whirlpool or some sort of dangerous tropical storm, or it's almost certainly going to be exposure or dehydration. Uh, so, uh, but the odds of actually accomplishing that feat are very, very slim. However, it's something that I've wanted to do. It's just sort of suicidal um, for a long time. Uh, Other things that I've kind of wanted to do might involve something like parkour, where I'm almost guaranteed to break my neck, and if I'm not, then I'm doing parkour. I've wanted to go ahead and climb Everest, and um, truthfully, even though we have come a long way and been able to do a lot more, um, with as various advancements and trial and error. Um, if you try to climb Everest and it is the wrong time of year, or it is just the unforeseeable events just so happen to unfold, it is not that uncommon for people to have to turn back before hitting the summit. And have to try to climb it multiple times in order to finally reach the summit from the base on foot. And to set yourself to getting to the summit at all costs, is definitely a challenge. It is borderline suicidal. You're not going to be killing yourself with a gun, but you might as well be killing yourself and probably be a lot more humane with the gun. And that's an important thing that I tell people is there are a lot better ways to go out than this. It's just that for me, climbing mountains, I love climbing mountains. Swimming, I love swimming. You know, these are things that, oh, another one is fighting like a tiger or a bear in hand to hand. Okay, for anyone who doesn't know, I've spent like 20 years in martial arts. Um, I love those old like stories about like human beings learning their combat skills from bears, and the European story is about wrestling black bear and stuff like this. I mean, to me, it's just really cool. It would be a cool way to go out. So you know when you're standing in heaven or wherever and talking to the dead passed away. And by the way, I do believe in an afterlife, so uh, that helps me to feel. And not that I believe in the afterlife in order to support my emotional state, but I know for a fact that there is an afterlife, and so I don't fear your death the way that most people would. Um, but when you're you know in that afterlife and people are saying, "Hey, how did you die?" "Oh, I got hit by a car." "Oh, how did you die?" Heart attack." "How did you die?" "I fought a tiger with my bare hands." The first thought is, "Wow, that sounds really stupid." But the second thought is, "Oh, damn. If I had known I was going out like that, that would have been such a cooler way to go out. Painful, horrific, but so much cooler." These are all, like I said, various reasons that I stick around, various ways that I think about it, and plan on moving forward with it. Um, but like I said, uh, big reason for me making these videos is so that I can die without regret. I could feel as though what I've left behind can continue to do my work so long as it is important. Um, and if not, I can simply fade away. And I'm quite comfortable with that. It's other people who seem to believe that you must have some purpose, that you must have some obligation to this world, that something that you're supposed to contribute beyond yourself, and yada yada yada. I've been trying to make use of my gifts for a long time, and believe me, I have found very, very few takers. So that sounds like a nice sentiment, but I don't quite believe that's worth sticking around for, considering how few, if any, people will actually make use of my contributions. So this more so allows me to be more comfortable with letting go. And for any of the people who are like, you can't you do that, what about all the people you're leaving behind? I'm like, go watch the video. So, anyway, that's a lot of how I deal with it. Now at this point. In the past, I didn't really deal with it. I endured it. I set myself up to like devalue it and try to confront it by like stripping it of its meaning and some people might read into this and say, well, that's what you're doing now too, but it's really not. It's a totally different thing. It's just difficult to explain in a way that can't be molded to the individual's preference. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there because I think that's about as much as I have to say on that subject. This has been a very long video. I was not planning on it being this long. But great thing about this new format is the show will go on as long as it has to. Whether that makes it a 30-minute video or whether that makes it a 3-minute video. It just so happens that I had much more to say than I had planned. So, I hope you all have a great evening and keep working it. As long as we keep on working, as long as we keep on moving, we can do better. So, see you guys in the next video.